David, it is always good to see you. How is the Millennium Falcon coming together?
Oh, dude, hold on. All right, fine. Mike, it's good to see you too, brother. Oh.
Yeah, this is great for podcast audio. David and I have been talking for the last 12 minutes, and I guess I should have let him know that I was going to ask a question about the
Yeah,
Millennium Falcon.
let me know that you were going to ask the Millennium Falcon question. All right,
Look at this.
so that's the Millennium Falcon right now. It is currently on step three has been completed. Step four is being started. So through the completion of step three, we are on 8 hours of work.
Can you go right from step three to or four to step 10?
No,
Why not?
you'd have a bad time.
Well, then how come people go right from initial call to proposal?
And they have a bad time.
But we still do it.
We still do it.
I don't understand. I mean, you got to go through the logical steps
Yeah.
when building Legos
Or anything. It's funny. So like this is gonna be a ridiculous project because 8 hours, we're done with three steps and there's 17 steps. So that's the Falcon's gonna take a while. My goal is to finish it over break. Then the second goal is to build something that will hold it because it's 30 pounds and it's like 3 feet wide. So I don't know. On your other point, I actually did it's funny you bring that up. I did a cheat sheet this week on MEDDPIC. And the whole point of it was I broke down the sales motion into three distinct categories: inbound budgeted, inbound unbudgeted, and outbound. And I essentially laid MEDDPIC over those motions, those processes,
got
and said, look, based on those are the three that are from a new business development perspective, those are the three motions you're going to go through the most. In fact, those may be the only three you ever go through. And depending on your approach, each of those motions requires a completely different, set of approaches and set of overlay of MEDDPIC on it. Because in an outbound sales process, if you're like, hey, first meeting, who's the economic buyer? Doesn't matter. Who the hell cares? They haven't even decided to change. In a budgeted expense, who's the economic buyer? Doesn't matter. They already have the budget established. Unless you go over budget, the economic buyer doesn't even need to get involved. The economics have been figured out. The only time you actually needed an economic buyer, in a early stage process, is inbound, unbudgeted. Because then it's like, we have a problem, we want a thing, we're looking for a solution. Cool. How are we going to help you pay for it? Outside of that, like that's one of those things that people constantly miss. To your point, is they skip steps or do things at the wrong times because they don't understand even the game that they're playing.
Is MedPick a process?
Hell no. MEDDPIC sits on top of your process. MEDDPIC is for deal management. MEDDPIC is to look at the process you're running and say, am I doing the right things at the right times? And if I miss something in the, how I'm selling motion, figure out what I missed so I can then go back and do something about it.
Why do people try to insert it as a process or leverage it as a process?
MEDDPIC is it's funny, it's blown up in the sales community. Everybody seems to be talking about it. I like to think I talk about it the most, and I've been doing it for 6 years. So I'm gonna take false credit. It's not me, but I'm gonna I'm gonna pretend. But it is incredibly, incredibly misunderstood. There is no governing authority. I think that's one of the big problems. There's no governing authority on MEDDPIC. There's nobody that like has put a stake in the ground, said, I own it, and I'm gonna thought lead around it. There's a lot of people who essentially have learned it because they went to an organization that was a MEDDPIC medic organization and learned a few things there and then brought it somewhere else and brought it somewhere else. So it's like it's Frankenstein. It's Frankenstein's monster. Like it's just there's no set way. So there are people who see it and they're like, oh, cool. It's like bam. I'm just gonna, MEDDPIC people. And then I do MEDDPIC and I'm good. I do MEDDPIC. MEDDPIC's great. And I think that's the problem is people really, really don't understand its true value and how to really deploy it correctly.
So what's the true value?
So the true value of MEDDPIC is showing you what your blind spot. I think I have this, you probably have this, but when we as human people selling are running their business, we get myopic. We look at our own deals and we say we're doing a great job. It's ego. And I've never talked to a salesperson, and Mike, you've led shitloads of salespeople too. How many times have you asked a salesperson about a deal and how it's going, and them say, not good? I mean, it's like 1%, maybe 99%. It's going great. They love me. They love me. Everything's fine. And I think that the power in it is the removal of that. It's the common language. It's the objectivity. It's the ability to look at any deal you're running because it's the building blocks of all deals and say, oh, I don't have this, or I've missed this, or I have a gap here, or I haven't client side validated this thing. And it creates that level of objectivity to go back and look at your deal and then make some decisions on what you want to do about it.
And you've got a cheat sheet.
I I've got apps, I've got cheat sheets, I've got questions. Like to me, in order to really understand a deal, you need to add and have a 90+% forecast accuracy. You need to answer roughly 80 to 90 questions. And once you answer 80 to 90 questions, I can tell you within a high 90% accuracy if your deal is going to be won or not, and if you've de-risked it enough.
So you talk about 80 to 90 questions, and some people struggle asking one question.
Yeah. So it's things like look at MEDDPIC, MEDDPIC, it's 7 or 8 letters depending on the version, or six really.
How
Um
often do they add new letters, and who adds new letters? Kind of funny. I think I
I'm saying
remember the pillow that you used to show off that had
8 letters.
whichever version of
Everybody.
this that was out there. But it seems like everybody keeps adding letters. Why do we keep adding letters?
Why do we keep adding letters? People add letters. There again, no governing body. So letters get added. So the main thing, the reason letters got added from MEDDPIC to MEDDPIC is to add paper process, because in some organizations, the decision process and the paper process, business process versus legal process, need to be separated because the legal process has such a high degree of complexity, and the business process, decision process isn't enough for high forecast accuracy because the business may want to buy, but legal may not be ready for a month or 2 months. So you need to, account for that. And that's why paper process was broken out. There hasn't been a letter added in, 10-ish years or so. I don't know the exact amount of time, but it's been a long time.
There's a rumor that a letter might be added between now and the 1st of April, though.
I've never heard that.
We'll
I
see.
hope. MEDDPICs. We're gonna add an S in there. We're gonna, or maybe another C for like compelling event that should actually live under, decision process. But
So, all right. So as you go through this, you're talking about decision process. You're talking about paper process. What's the difference between a process and a checklist?
So a process is a step-by-step guide of you do this, you get this outcome. It's actually why I fundamentally don't believe in the modern sales process as a step-by-step guide. I am a believer of the uh, the stageless sales process. So processes do these stages, you get this in the outcome. A checklist is um, have I done, these things and have I asked these questions? So there is a degree of overlap. The problem is neither of them will actually tell you if you're going to get a deal.
I fundamentally disagree.
Okay, go ahead.
Ask me some questions.
No, why?
Why? So, how will a checklist determine whether or not you're going to get a deal?
And that's what I'm saying. It won't.
Okay.
Neither of these will. Need
So,
to know your process because you're the stages don't determine the deal.
I
Actions
again disagree.
is
Let's talk about this. Okay, so stages do not determine the deal. What
correct.
determines the deal?
Actions and outcomes.
Actions and outcomes. Okay, so you would argue for an activity driven sales process.
I would argue for a completed action, client side validated, buyer journey driven sales process.
Okay, so is demo a stage in your sales process?
So in a stageless sales process, demo completed would be an action because you have to do that.
It's an
But then
activity. Yep.
then did the demo solve the problem? How complete of the problem did it solve? Do they see the differentiation inside of your demo, versus others? Are you vendor of choice based on the solution that you've put together and saw? So like again, those are actions, those are outcomes, those are questions being answered. that will then determine the likelihood of risk you have in your deal. And in theory, as they answer yes to those questions, the risk goes down.
Yeah. So there's still stages that are occurring.
You can
They
here's the
happen in a series. They happen in a specific order, correct?
But here's the problem with that. Okay. So you've got your stages. Let's use pretty commercial ones. Discovery, demo, proposal, close. Okay. I would add like solution alignment, business alignment into those things. But that's a pretty, standard stage sales process. You you can go from discovery to solution, but what happens when a new stakeholder enters? You now need to jump back, and no one wants to jump back. And what happens when someone loses their job? Now you got to jump back as well. What happens when you discover a new problem through your solution presentation and questioning that impacts a different department? You now got to jump back again. What happens when you start to build a business case and get far along in the sales process on a single item, and then realize that the business has a new problem you can solve, and now you need to jump back and rerun and readjust the business case. What happens when you start impacting multiple silos of the business, and now you need to get multiple decision makers, and now you've extended the budget past where it needs to be. So now an economic buyer now needs to get involved. So I guess my point is, like, a process doesn't account for that, because a process is linear. Do this. You don't, in a manufacturing line, you go straight through. You don't like back the conveyor belt up. That's the problem.
So here's for people who are not watching the video, you're starting to see like veins get ready to pop out of my head. The color is starting to move out of my face. Oxygen has been depleted because of the way that I'm clenching my jaw. What David's describing, and you've heard me talk about this for anybody who's listened to the podcast for any period of time, is that when you look at sales stages for the purpose of forecasting, this looks more like chutes and ladders. It's a looping process. You advance, you might go up a ladder, get really excited, and then move a couple of steps forward, and you're down the slide, you're down the chute. And so there's a process associated with that. The thing is that it's a looping process where you can go backward, and we as leaders of sales professionals, as revenue professionals, leaders inside organizations, need to understand that those things can go backward. When they go backward, though, they still have to move forward in a specific order. If they don't move forward in that specific order, you're taking on additional risk. So when the mistake that I see made over and over and over again when organizations struggle with forecasting is they think of their sales stages as linear, where everything has to go and things can't move back and forth. And the other thing that they tend to do is they look at them in current tense rather than past tense. You pass through these stages. Now, whether or not you want to call it an activity, I won't get too hung up on that piece. There's a specific question that you should be able to answer, your exit criteria for each of these stages. And now that stage it happens is now listed as past tense. You can have a probability of sale associated with it. And if you do that, you will improve your forecasting. On the other side, though, when we talk about buyer journey, that's more like the game of life. The buyer journey never goes backward. They're always picking up new pieces as they move along. So that is a linear but meandering.
Yeah. Well, the buyer journey can go backwards. You see it in turn when organizations turn over. Like when you have like a leader leave and a new leader come in, and they use one tool versus the other. I mean, it goes.
Yeah, but I mean, like in that instance, I would say that so the buyer journey in that instance, if we look at the person who's going through it or the people inside the organization who are part of it, at that point, the journey has been severed and it needs to start from the beginning. Like, so, and you have to go back through that process of saying, hey, is the person on that side problem aware? If they're not problem aware, then there's some work that needs to be done to make sure that they are problem aware. Then, are they solution aware? If not, then there's some work that needs to be done related to them being solution aware. So if that person leaves the organization or a decision is made that they don't want to move forward, then they go back to the beginning, and then they've got to go through those kind of pieces again, because the challenge that we're solving for inside those organizations typically is going to change depending on the perspective of the person who comes in there. But That buyer journey is more like the game of life. The sales process for forecasting is more like chutes and ladders. And then what we do as reps or day-to-day work is more like Monopoly.
So I have followed and have always agreed with your game analogies, and I continue to do so. I think what the big problem is, and why I'm not a fan of the modern Salesforce driven process is a couple reasons. One, like just straight up, how many leaders have you met in your life that, like, percentage wise, that are comfortable and encourage reps to move back a stage?
I know one, but
I know one.
like,
I know one. I know one.
but
I know.
that's a so people may not be comfortable with it, but fuck, life's not comfortable.
I,
Business is not comfortable.
but here's
Like,
but
I
the,
do here's the question I ask in that situation.
yeah.
Do you want to be comfortable or do you want to be accurate?
No, but this is I fundamentally agree with you. 99% of leaders, and I've probably been part of, I don't know, 10,000 plus deals in my career, either like personally and or like oversaw or things. None of them went, I mean, very few, handful went, smoothly. And they always had, stalls and hiccups and movement back and things like that. I literally never once in my entire career has a leader said to me, "Hey, you know what? I'm glad we moved that back to discovery so more people could get involved." Every single what? Why the stage? Why the stage go backwards? Stages shouldn't go backwards. You the stages only go forwards. Like, I can't tell you how many times I've had that conversation in my career, and even though I a million percent agree with you, that's the problem. The problem, it's the tool, but then it's how people look at the tool and evaluate it, that don't actually give the freedom to the salespeople and to the leadership under them to manage the tool properly to actually give real accuracy. And I'm going to talk more about that, but you've got something to say. So
Well, you're not when you restrict your team in that manner, you demonstrate how disconnected you are relative to how revenue is generated in your
well,
business.
then
And
every sales leader on the planet is disconnected.
but and that's a problem, right? Like,
And
okay,
that's a
so
huge problem,
why is every sales leader on the planet disconnected?
because they look at their state. So there's a couple things.
Oh, wait, hold on. Are you saying that they manage the business out of a CRM or out of a spreadsheet?
But that's
Oh,
the tool itself is broken.
the
That's
tool's
my
not broken. The implementation of the tool is broken.
so yes, the implementation tool is broken. And one of the reasons why it's broken is because leadership doesn't allow it to be used in a way that would go take the stages back. So this is a chicken or an egg problem. It's like, we have a tool that could work, but we won't let it to work that way. But if we design the tool properly, as in a stageless sales process based on completed action, then then leadership would get what they actually need.
So help me understand this because I must just be super slow. I'm just mentally not able to keep up. Why is what you're describing a stageless sales process?
Because it's here's the problem again. Problem with stages. I am at I'm in discovery, so discovery is worth 1%. I'm now in demo, so it's worth 25%. I'm now in solution alignment phases worth 50%. I'm now in proposal, it's worth 70%. Cool. So I'm going to forecast that it's $1 million deal. So I'm going to forecast that the business or is or $100,000 is about to bring in 700K or 70K. And then, it jumps back a stage. Oh my God, the business is now only bringing 35K. Actually, no, the business is going to bring in zero. And it's going to bring in zero the whole freaking time, because the stages actually don't increase revenue. Completed actions that de-risk the deal, that improve forecast accuracy, increase revenue, because the stages need to change. So, like, that's where it's broken.
So I think the challenge, and a lot of people have these set up. So both David and I have had an opportunity to work inside many revenue organizations, inside have operated inside many CRMs. So when we get to see where these things are broken. The challenge, one of the challenges that David just brought up, is that we look at discovery as a stage. Discovery is not a stage in the sales process that indicates or that it provides an indicator of probability. You're constantly going through discovery. If you're not continuing to ask questions, David mentioned earlier, there's 90 questions in the simplified checklist that helps you. And there's me just poking fun at David with 90 questions, but there's 90 questions in a checklist that you go through.
It's very well engineered. It is incredibly well engineered.
It is. I have no doubt. The mad scientist has engineered the checklist. So there's this view inside many organizations where discovery is a stage, demo is a stage. The ones that David mentioned that I think fit are things like proposal, but it should be something like proposal approved. So the proposal approved. So it's past tense. That thing has happened.
Completed action.
Yes. Yeah, but it's and everything's an action in one way, shape, or form. So like to walk through, here's the catalyst sale process. And this one is Foundations and Miller Hyman, but it's validated. Do I see a scenario where we can work with each other? Single question, yes or no. Validated, if we could work with each other, yes. Boom, we're now at 5%. Qualified, do I understand the problem from the perspective of the customer? And I've got my qualification framework over my right hand shoulder as I figure out which side is what in the video. Simple questions: who, what, why, when, how type stuff. But qualified, do I understand the story from the problem from the customer's perspective? Based on my understanding of the problem, can we solve it with our current solution? That's confirm fit. So we've confirmed fit from our standpoint. Does the client believe that we can solve it, and can they afford it? That's client confirmed fit. That's the next stage. Now, as new people come in, as David mentioned, sometimes you're going to go back, because if a new person comes in, you have to go back to qualify, or back into that qualification area to figure out what's their perspective of the problem. Why do they care about it? What's the business impact of solving? What's the risk of not solving? All of those kind of things. But this is a looping process, like chutes and ladders, where you can advance and you can go backward. If you skip any step in that order, meaning I jump from validated to client confirmed fit, because the client says something about it, then I'm getting happy ears and I'm listening for something I want to hear. And then I feel comfortable sticking a proposal in front of people, and it doesn't go anywhere. The proposal doesn't get approved. We don't get a contract done, like all of those kind of things. But these are specific stages with clear definitions and simple binary statements or questions that indicate that we've actually passed through that gate. And if you implement something like that inside your organization, you will get better at forecasting. The problem that I see over and over again is the one that David brought up earlier, which is people don't like the idea of things going backward. They don't like to tell people that they've lost momentum or things are going bad, whether it's a rep or it's a leader. This is why looking at two key metrics is critical: pipeline created and pipeline developed. Over time, if we understand those two metrics, we'll have a better sense for where a risk is inside the business. But there's a process that you can go through. And I think the mistake that a lot of people make when it comes to this stuff, and as you can tell, I get pretty passionate and excited about it. But I think the mistake that people make is they try to manage forecasting in their sales process in the context of the way the buyer buys or the way that the rep sells. And these are three distinct processes. A specific job to be done for each. The first one is, go ahead.
I would argue that people are following the process that the CRM companies tell them to right out of the box.
Well, and that's the disgusting part. That's one of the biggest mistakes I think HubSpot has made in the negative impact that it's had on the sales and revenue community. They've taken, what's that?
Same thing with Salesforce. You turn on Salesforce day one, it auto create my stages: discovery, demo. Like
it gets into this whole, what is it? What's AIDA stand for? Attention. What is it? Attention or awareness, interest, decision, action. That's the stuff that's been out there. Like when Capone's been on here, we'll talk about like the history of sales. That stuff has been out there forever. HubSpot goes in and trains a bunch of HubSpot minions to go out there as marketers, people who market stuff, to now play sales we're not fucking playing. Like anyway, so
And that's I blame this. That's again, I go back. I'm blaming the CRM companies. So like because they started all of this. It's their tool.
I I blame
Their
the
tool.
consultants who come in there and try to do other stuff. Like they come in and they say, look, MEDDPIC is going to solve all of your problems. So let's talk about the difference between a checklist. So we were talking about this a little bit before. One of the things that's going on is the difference between sales process, deal management.
Sales process, sales training, deal management. Three distinct things.
Let's
Yeah.
break them down. So what is deal management?
Well, so to me, you need to start top. So sales
Okay.
process is what we've been talking about.
Okay.
Sales process is here are the stages that we go through, and high level what should be happening in those stages. Then you have sales training that sits on top of the process that says here are the behaviors and actions that you need to take to run the sales process,
Yep.
complete the things that need to happen in each stage. And then there's deal management. Deal
Okay.
management sits on top of sales process and says, cool, as you're going through the act of selling, governed by, in theory, a way that you sell, sales training, here's where you've missed things along the way in the how you sell motion to then determine, cool, we need to go back now that I know I've missed things and take certain actions governed by then sales training again to close those gaps.
What's the most common? Give me three of the most common mistakes, and we'll break them down that people make when thinking about all three: the process, the training, and the management.
Process linear, not going backwards.
Okay.
We've been talking about that.
Yep.
Training, not following it, not being able to see your blind spot inside of it. I think those are the two most common. And then, deal management, people don't know how to deal manage. Like, I don't even want to say people like there's a problem with deal management or like a big problem with it. Like the big problem with it is like literally, I think this is a fairly new concept. I've been beating this drum for a while, but I think people consistently confuse deal management with sales training.
Mm.
And I think people don't actually understand how to deal manage properly. And I think that's the problem with that.
Is it is it a challenge with people just not knowing how to manage in general?
Maybe.
Seriously,
A
I mean,
lot of
like think
layers.
about like we talked about time management, we talked about project management, we talked about now deal management. Like,
Yeah.
is there a challenge that people have with like managing stuff?
I would say, I mean, I this is not a field I have studied. But in my general observation, yes, management of things requires discipline, and people in general don't like discipline.
Yeah, yes, I think we've hit it. It's like it's kind of I mean, I think you think about how hard it is for people when they move into their first management role. Like the whole idea of managing resources. I'm gonna manage time, I'm gonna manage people, I'm gonna manage money, like just managing resources and kind of breaking it down and then starting to look at, all right, what is the management of resources that we're allocating to a specific deal? What are the variables that are working through this thing? How are we keeping track of which, things we've checked and which ones now have been unchecked because we brought new people in? And I think that's probably the biggest piece of all of this is super, super complex. And we make it more complicated as we add new layers to it. So identify ways inside your organization where you can start to remove some of those layers and potentially simplify things. Just because you can put it in the CRM doesn't mean you should.
Yeah, I agree with that.
So let's talk a bit about because now that we hit on management for just a little bit there, let's talk about leadership.
Mm.
Why are leaders failing inside organizations when it comes to the revenue side of the equation?
They were never taught how to be leaders.
Yeah. Why not?
They were promoted because they were the best rep. And people, and I've talked about this often, but um, leadership and sales leadership sales leadership and sales. The only thing they have in common is they're both inside of a sales org. They're 1,000,000% distinct disciplines. Yes, good product knowledge and industry knowledge and all of those things go into being a successful leader. But the how you lead versus how you sell motion are completely distinct motions. And unfortunately, so many people get really good at the how you sell motion. So then they get told, cool, go make a bunch of mini-me's and, now go apply you to the how you lead or leadership motion without ever getting trained. I forget the stat, but it was something like high 80s, low 90s% of frontline and second line leaders have never actually been trained how to lead. And that's the problem with leadership.
What's your definition of leadership?
Ooh, that's a good one. Um, Rallying people around a common mission, and it's two things. It's first creating people who are willing to follow you,
Okay.
and then once they have seen success in following you, it is creating it is empowering and creating the next generation of leaders. But you need to do both. Some people are like, no, it's creating more leaders. No, people need to follow you first. You can't just have a bunch of leaders because then you don't have doers. So someone needs to follow you into battle, and then once they've proven themselves in battle, they then need to be trained to replace you so you can move up, or adjacent to you, so then you can lead more troops.
So let's say I'm out there and I've just been moved into a leadership role,
Hmm.
but I haven't gotten leadership training inside my organization. There's not a leadership program, or just doesn't hit the level of leader that I'm at inside the organization. What do I do?
I mean, when I first learned how to lead, and I was really bad at it, and I failed at it quite a bit. So that's why I then started studying and realizing the things I'm realizing. John Maxwell and Ken Blanchard were like two like shining bright lights for me that kind of helped me learn. But then also, I was very lucky that I had some really, really, really shitty leaders. So I learned, the things not to do. And then I was also, fairly lucky that I had a couple really, really good ones. And I learned, what, to do. I also went through ADP's leadership development program where I learned like directly from Marcus Buckingham, who is like the father of strength-based leadership and coaching. So like there's some of that, as well. So just mishmash of what to do, what not to do, reading, mentors, all the things.
Take some initiative.
Yeah,
Go
you
out
should.
there, and figure it out. I think
Right.
like so. Let's talk about a couple leadership mistakes.
Well, and
What's a
I think that's that right there. If you want to talk about why I feel like and why I feel like and you and others that I surround myself with are top performers or thought leaders in their field, they we did the hard freaking work. We did when we ran into a roadblock, we didn't stop. We didn't blame. We said, okay, it's on me to figure out. And then I went and figured it out, and it was painful and it was hard. And it was the willingness to do painful, hard things that caused learning. So, I mean, for folks listening to this, if like one of the biggest things to success is like the willingness to do the things others aren't, and the willingness to work harder and smarter than everybody else around you. And when you hit a roadblock, not point any finger at anything and just, try and figure it out. But sorry, I had to add that.
Yeah, I think it's well, not I think it is. It's powerful. It's super important for people to go out there and start asking questions. Demonstrate an interest in getting better at something. Don't look for a quick fix or a shortcut.
Or someone else to do it for you, or to
Yeah,
blame your company or your boss for not, providing you like more. And it's like I fundamentally believe the job of leaders is to enable people, and the job of companies is to enable leaders to enable people, and to give them what they need to be successful. But at some point, you're not get like things break, like the tools don't work, the training fails, like the how you ran into something wasn't accounted for, there's a new variable, a new competitor, a new something just ultimately doesn't go according to plan. That's a lot of things. Like if the company has done their part, like there comes a point in time where like you need to now do yours and like figure it out and not point more fingers or expect someone else to solve the problem for you.
Well, and even if the company hasn't done their part, you've just got to go out there and figure it out. Like that's and what you might end up figuring out is it's not the right company to be at, but that's okay. That's a leadership decision of self that, hey, maybe I'm in the wrong place, maybe I'm in the wrong operating environment, maybe this is not the right thing for me to do. But make sure you're asking the questions.
Yeah.
Like make sure you're go ahead.
All I was gonna say, like, your quota doesn't change whether they've provided you the tools or not. So, like, yes, I I will accept a degree of blame, and I will have, ire. I will have anger towards organizations that don't provide what should be provided. But regardless, to your point, yeah, you you need to you need to figure it out. It's on you. It's your number or not. Like, ultimately.
And there's no shortage of tools and resources that are out there that can help you figure it out.
Yeah,
The challenge though is it's not a series of constantly reading or constantly listening or constantly asking others as you go through the figure it out motion. You actually have to do something
constantly
to take
doing.
action. You have to apply this stuff because everything is theoretical until it's applied.
Right.
And then it becomes practical, right? And you start to learn, what am I really good at? I mean, because there are certain things that I'm good at that are different than the things that David is good at. There are things that Jen is really good at that are different than the things that I'm really good at. There are some things that I really suck at that others do super well. And as you go through it, you don't know until you don't know until you know. And the only way to know is to actually go through, do the work, look at your feedback loops. Again, going back to these loops, look at the feedback loops, assess things, and then iterate and move forward. So take ownership of yourself. Don't go out there saying, hey, things could be so much better if, or
Yeah,
if you identify some of those ifs, go get them.
I'm a big believer of high bias action. Like, take action. Just do a lot. Do more than everybody else around you. You will learn faster. You will fail harder. You will, learn what works. Like, freaking do more. Stop. I hate saying it. Stop thinking about it. Just go do stuff, and eventually you'll figure out what works.
What's your reflection process? So like, how do you go through the process of saying, sorry, I stepped right over you. What is it?
No, I was gonna say you're assuming I have one.
Well, but
So
so if you're out there doing work, you're not just going from task to task to task to task to task without stopping to look and say, oh, all right, are we actually making progress? Like you just picked up you 45 minutes ago, you picked up the Millennium Falcon. It is not 30 pounds yet. It will be 30 pounds at some point in time. You're on stage, you finished stage 3, you're moved into stage 4, right? So you're going through this process. Are you just going and just keep pushing things in and then never looking at it, or you actually look at it to say, wow, holy crap, we've made a little bit of progress here?
so it's funny. I don't know if my reflection process is very gut and or it's very emotional. I don't I will look at data, especially if there's high accuracy data present. So, like, as an example, when I am doing stuff related to, like, outbound campaigns, the data is really, really present. It's very easy to see. You can A/B test. It's quite simple. And when I'm, doing things that don't have that level of very clear, accurate data, it's very emotional and gut driven. It's like, I did this thing, did it work? And work defined as, like, if it's a thing with a person, did the other person feel good about the action? And, did we move forward? If not, cool. I need to potentially change my approach with that person, or, if there's repeated, bad feelings and bad outcomes, change more the approach globally. If it's a physical thing, like, did we, did it go together correctly, and did the outcome, like, lead to a, positive result or what we expected? It's more emotion, it's more gut, it's more that it's a lot less like, I think you're, like, one of the things I know about you, like, your reflection period is probably significantly greater and more methodical than mine, because the level of depth you go to some of your thoughts are, you go with, like, I've gone to your level of depth with things like, MEDDPIC and MEDDPIC. I don't go to your level of depth with as many things as you do. I've always really admired that about you, is like you've thought very deeply about a lot of things.
I don't know if that's a good thing, but and thank you. So thank you for that. I think it is a good thing, but the key, and but is not the right word here. The key is taking action. It's not just sitting in thought and saying, "Oh yeah, this kind of sounds good." It's working through it, applying it, then leveraging that feedback loop. And we talk about feedback loops. One of the ones that's most widely known is the OODA loop, which comes from John Boyd, and it is observe. So we see where we are, orient, kind of figure out where we are inside the operating environment, make a decision, and then take action.
Mm-hmm.
And a challenge that a lot of people have is, if you look at it drawn up, it's a closed loop process. It's not a closed loop. It's more of a spiral where you're constantly observing again, reorienting, making a decision, taking action. And the benefit of the OODA loop is accelerated decision making. It's simplifying that decision making. It's moving through things quickly so that you can take action and then reevaluate things and take more action. If you get caught in a circular loop where you're just doing the same things over and over and over again and expecting different results, then you're gonna drive yourself crazy. And I think, to the point, a couple of the points that we've talked about so far in the conversation, if your forecasting is not working, you need to start thinking differently about why it's not working. Is it a deal management challenge? Is it a sales process challenge? Is it a training challenge? And that provides three distinct lenses to look at the challenge through to help figure it out. And we as leaders have to get out of the spreadsheet and the database and get into the operating environment with our team so that we can observe and figure out what is actually changing inside the market, what's happening inside the market, how are people doing things differently, what type of questions are coming up from customers. Like, get out into the field and get some of that data. And that's leading from the front line.
That also requires you to trust your people and not say, nah, just keep going. We're fine.
I don't
And
understand that. Like,
most leaders
who
don't.
does that?
Most leaders don't trust their sellers. It's the greatest thing. It's like not trusting your soldiers. Like, if the soldier on the front line says, "Hey, I need to call in an airstrike. I freaking see some bad guys right there." No one's like, "No, you don't. No, you don't. Just keep marching forward. You're good. You're good." They're
Yeah.
like, "Cool, duck cover, and bombs coming in." Like we I we as sales leaders do need to trust our salespeople. Now, the problem is salespeople make every freaking excuse under the sun. Soldiers don't. They're like, no, it's on me to accomplish this mission. And when I think that's the thing. If we could somehow get salespeople to think and take that level of ownership that soldiers do about accomplishing missions, then leaders can trust you more, because they know that when you do bring them something, it's not just another complaint. You've actually exhausted the possibility. So both sides have ownership here.
This is a topic that I am pretty passionate about, and have friends who have gone really deep into this. One of the friends who's gone pretty deep into this is Dan Cockrell, and in a book he wrote, which is "How is the Culture in Your Kingdom," gets into the importance of leading self. And once you've demonstrated an ability to lead self, you've earned the right to lead another person. Once you've demonstrated an ability to lead another person, you've earned the right to lead teams. Once you've demonstrated the ability to lead teams, you've earned the right to lead teams of teams. And if at any point in time you fail at either of those things, you're not demonstrating that capability, go all the way back to the beginning and check yourself and just say, am I leading self? It is super easy to look at others and tell people how they should do things or what they should do or how you would do it differently. That's not leadership. That's not leadership. Like, go back in and say, okay, what do I contribute to this thing? What can I do? Where's that level of self-awareness? How does it apply here? And to David's point earlier, I think we've created a really big challenge in because we're not teaching our kids how to be better leaders. We're not creating opportunities for people inside our organization, frontline people in our organization to demonstrate leadership from the front line. And if we do this, we'll create that opportunity that David talked about a little bit earlier to create better leaders inside our business. And that's a core part of leadership. So really good stuff, David.
Thanks, sir. Not to go too far back, but I genuinely think like that I don't know when this happened, and maybe it was the rise of like helicopter parenting or something like that. But like there seems to be a generational, a time, a void, a something. I do think it maybe has to do with helicopter parenting, but it's the people have either people have either lost the ability to think critically, lost the ability to potentially take responsibility, to figure things out themselves. Um, and I think that's going to continue to get worse with, you know, AI being there to give you every answer immediately, with, you know, again, the current generation thinking that there's should always be something that solves the problem for them, as opposed to them building or figuring out how to solve the problem. And I don't know what's caused that. I I need to put my finger on it. And Mike, you've maybe researched it, but like that right there, if more people just figured that piece out, man, the difference.
There's two things, and we've not done a really good job with this. Like I see this as our kids are getting older and they're going away from the house and they're doing all of that kind of stuff. So in general, we've done a good job. Both the kids are healthy, they're here, they do productive things, they're moving forward. There's the two big ones for me are high sense of self and high level of self-confidence. So we should have, like, if the kids can leave the house with a high level of self-confidence and a high level of self-awareness at both of those things, then we've done a good job. Then we've earned the right for them to get to the point where we can start to say, help them think critically, think creatively. Then you start to move into make a positive impact on others. And if we can do those things, then we've now created a couple of good humans inside this operating environment that can go out and do other things inside other operating environments. And our big challenge, and another book to read if you haven't read it yet, is Jocko Willink's Extreme Ownership. It gets into that, and there's a lot of military stuff that David and I have been talking about. I never served. I have a brother who served. I did some volunteer stuff for ESGR, but there are a lot of lessons that we can learn from amazing leaders who've had an opportunity to serve their country and lead men into and women into challenges. I think Stanley McChrystal's team of teams around decentralized command is absolutely phenomenal. Jocko's Extreme Ownership is phenomenal. And anything that you can read on Boyd and the OODA loop is also phenomenal. To get out of the military stuff, Drucker's stuff on effective executive is just a blueprint for management and leadership. And if you read Jim Collins' foreword to the effective executive, you'll get 10 lessons that he learned from his time with Drucker that you can apply to get better at a lot of the things that we're talking about from an individual perspective. David, anything to kind of close out on? What did we not get into that we should have gotten into in this conversation? And thanks for spending a Saturday with me.
Yeah, man, of course, always. What did we not get into that we should have? Lists of favorite bourbons, and holiday plans. Outside of that, it's pretty much the only thing that's on my mind right now.
All right, what's your favorite bourbon?
Ooh, favorite bourbon right now. I would say, and let me like take a step back. I use bourbon incorrectly. Brown alcohol. So I've gone through a very very long journey of all different types of brown alcohol, but my favorite right now is the Japanese whiskeys, and specifically Hibiki Harmony. I've been drinking quite a bit of, and it is awesome. So that's probably the top of the list right now. Anybody listening, feel free to send me a bottle of Hibiki.
There you go. If you want to get go close to David's heart, send him Hibiki Harmony.
You had it, Mike?
Have I had it? No. I have not. I've not had it. I'm getting into more tequila these days, but I'm on the verge of deciding that I'm not going to drink for a period of time. We'll see. It's one of those, because I'm even asking the question. I probably should push myself from on the verge to deep into that. But it's the holiday season. It becomes really accessible. You end up hanging out, and sometimes you can go a little bit too deep into it. I think we had an awesome conversation today. We went pretty deep into a couple of topics. We broke down the difference between sales process, training, and deal management, spent some time both on the deal management and the process side, highlighted some areas where folks should look at on the training side. If you are interested in going really deep into some of the deal management stuff, take a look at what David is doing out there in the market, both in what he has in Deal Doc and the checklists that he's got related to MEDDPIC or MEDDPIC or whatever other letters are going to be added to this one over the course of the next little bit. This piece on leadership, I think, is really important. We are all accountable to self and accountable to our customers and accountable to the people inside our business and accountable to those who invest in the business. So if you check yourself on the accountability side, take ownership of it, good things will happen. David, thank you. Where can people find more about what you're working on? And where do you want to send people beyond the Millennium Falcon pictures?
Yeah. Always a good talk, my friend. LinkedIn, David Weiss. I'm at the Sales Collective, Deal Doc, what have you. Hit me up on LinkedIn. I will respond as long as it's not spam.
So actually, let's just do a real quick plug for the Sales Collective. So tell everybody, what's the Sales Collective?
So I'm the Chief Revenue Officer of the Sales Collective. It is a sales transformation firm. We hire people, assess them, onboard them, train, develop them, teach them things like, various forms of the popular deal methodology, MEDDPIC, video call coach, apply fractional chief revenue officers like Mike, who has been so kind to support a few of our clients in a great way, and things along those lines. So if you're struggling with some aspect of sales, we are there to help you figure it out and solve it.
Awesome. David, thank you. If you know somebody who would enjoy this episode, get something valuable out of the episode, whether it's related to Legos, related to process, related to leadership, related to Hibiki, please share it with them. Let David and I know. Share that via LinkedIn. We'll see those. The shares help people get exposed to the podcast. Sales is a thinking process. Business is a thinking process. Life is a thinking process. How are you thinking differently about your process?